All right. Welcome, everyone. Great to see you today. And hard to believe it's already October 30th. This year has flown by, and I'm excited to have you all here for this fun webinar. My name is Jennifer Bittinger. I am president of Narrativa, and I am thrilled to be your host today for this wonderful webinar called Don't Be a Medical Writing Zombie. Learn how AI automation can get all your day's work done in just 20 minutes. And it sounds a little too good to be true, but it is actually reality now, which is wonderful. And so I first want to start by just some household things that we can talk about. If you have questions during the webinar for the panel that you want to ask during the Q&A, you can go ahead to the bottom right side of your screen, click on the little questions icon, and you can type in your questions there, and I will review those and ask them during the Q&A part of the webinar. Also, if you want a copy of this webinar, you'll get a recording at the end and also a copy of the PDF that I'll be sharing with the presentation. So great to have you all here. First, I'm going to just start by introducing my wonderful panelists who I have here today. I have Mona Stefanos, Dave Evans, and also Ihab Naim. And Mona, would you like to do a brief introduction and say hello to everyone?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Mona Stefanos. My background, I have a medical degree from Egypt. I worked in research forever, and I've been working at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center as a clinical research manager. I have been also part of the medical advisory committee assistant with the BTML, which is part of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and I've been involved recently with the medical writing. Thank you for being here today.
Great. Thanks, Mona. Thank you so much. And Dave, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thanks. Welcome, everyone. My name's Dave Evans. Been in the clinical research industry for over 40 years. Been most recently the president and CEO of CDISC, the Global Regulatory Standards Organization. And prior to that, founder of a couple different organizations, CROs, and clinical technology companies. Biomedical engineer by education, but clinical research and informaticist by trade.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave. Great to have you here. And Ihab, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Ihab. I'm a medical writer. My background is in pharmacy, marketing, and AI. I have been a medical writer since 2017. I have been involved in writing various types of clinical documents, and it's such a privilege to be a part of this panel, and thank you for attending this webinar.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's great to have you all here today. And as I said earlier, we're going to have just a brief presentation that I'm going to give. And then after that, we're going to hear from our panelists today on some very important topics in regards to medical writing. So first, I just wanted to dive into the deep subject of medical writing, not from more of a writing perspective first, but then also an industry perspective. What are we seeing right now, and what are the trends and forecasts that we're going to be seeing in the next few years? As we know, AI here in this little quote, it's very powerful because it talks about AI has the power to augment our abilities, not replace them. By leveraging AI, we can enhance patient care, improve diagnostic accuracy, and reduce the administrative burden on healthcare professionals. And it's interesting because I feel like a few years ago, even medical writers were very scared for good reason that AI was going to replace them. But in fact, it's only going to help medical writers and encourage them to do even more great work. As we're seeing, you know, I'm sure if you're in the medical writing space, you know that it takes on average around 200 days to compose and work on a CSR, clinical study report, and have it ready for submission. There are many folks involved, many different teams in writing a CSR, but it's definitely a very big task for medical writers. And so we're seeing that with AI, we can actually speed up that timeline or shrink the timeline, actually, I should say, to be more like 24 to 48 hours. for the first full draft of the CSR, the clinical study report. And how does that happen? I mean, a lot of people say, well, that sounds like a magic wand, a little bit too good to be true. But as we've seen at Narrativa and as others have seen in the industry, now with such data-heavy documents, we can actually find that there is a lot of templatized, different styles of structure that we can use very small AI models and more statistical models to guarantee that 100% accuracy, to guarantee that standardization that everyone is yearning for and wanting, even the regulators. So that has really changed how medical writers can use AI to help lift this heavy burden of having to write all these documents. And so why should we, leverage AI to really help in this area? And I would say it is by far right now that I've seen as president of Narrativa, but also talking with many other industry leaders, pharma sponsor, C-level and below, even CROs, biotechs, that really the biggest area we're seeing is the medical writing portion of clinical really is the lowest hanging fruit to start with AI. Reason being is that it is so time intensive. And as we have seen, it really has the opportunity to minimize the burnout. As we'll hear from our panelists today, who have worked many hours, hundreds of hours themselves on these documents, when you're getting to, writing the CSR, you're already at the point, most people, the point of burnout. And you are a human being. So you're not a machine. You're not at the point where you can go hundreds of hours without really having great fatigue, and when we have fatigue or we rush, that's when we make mistakes as human beings. So why not have a tool that can really help us to not just, increase data accuracy, but really be kind of our safeguard in a sense to highlight those data discrepancies and highlight the areas that maybe we missed because we were rushing or because we were so tired. This is an interesting chart that I wanted to bring up, and it actually, ironically, just came out in 2024, in August this year, and it was published by Prophecy Market Insights. And this report really showed that the current growth right now of the medical writing market, this includes CROs, this includes even maybe within sponsors. There are some sponsors who are bringing all the medical writing in-house more. And so right now it's around a $4.3 billion market for medical writing. But with Prophecy Market Insights, they actually published the report and found in the data that with the current projections of increasing the number of clinical trials per year, having to increase not only the clinical trials, but also the publications, a variety of materials like investigator brochures, the protocols, even clinical research results and patient information books. This type of really medical heavy writing is going to project and propel our whole industry, the medical writing industry, to be at least $11 billion by 2034. Now, I'm just going to let that sink in for a second, because when I read this, it was shocking. I couldn't believe that this type of growth was projected for the next 10 years, because, I think for a long time in the medical writing community, people have been weary or, really concerned that there was going to be a decrease of medical writers. And in fact, this is showing the opposite. There are not going to be enough human medical writers. And the reason we need human medical writers is because you are the gatekeepers. The medical writers are the experts who have to do that final review. Like in Narrativa, our AI solution is fantastic because it gives you that first full draft. boom, within seconds or a minute or less, you can have the first full draft of a patient narrative report. But then you as the medical writer still need to be that reviewer, that person who does the quality control, the validation, verification, and really the gatekeeper between what is automatically generated and the regulators. We need you more than ever. And so that's why this slide is so powerful. I'm going to go to the next slide, which kind of backs this up even more. And this was from the EMWA, the European Medical Writers Association journal from 2008. So this is a little bit dated, right? This is pretty old. But this was a chart that showed really how many hours on average it takes for a medical writer to draft the TFLs, tables, figures, and listings, then draft the first draft of the CSR, clinical study report. You'll see here that, on average, it takes, at least 16 working days to draft the first tables, figures, and listings after that database is locked. But then if we go down farther, the first draft of the CSR, clinical study report, it takes on average 23 days to actually draft this first CSR. So that's a lot of hours and time intensive, time that's intensive for these medical writers. Whereas if you have a tool that's an assistant, like, our platform, Narrativa's platform, or another one where you're having high data accuracy, at least 98% or higher in data accuracy, you already have the template set up for your, the structure of the report ahead of time. You can generate the first CSR draft within, minutes. And we, nowadays there's training. We offer training at our company for medical writers on how to set up everything so that when that database is locked, all you have to do is just click a button and get that first draft. So we're seeing that this is helping to really meet a great pain point within the industry. And I will, take a break here, but if you have questions about any of that, please put those questions in the little question box down at the bottom right of your screen. Because these are big topics that we really need to talk about. This is not just fluffy conversation. Like, this is really a big, important topic right now for our industry. So how can AI automation assist with medical writers? I've, touched on a few of these points, but again, we're going to break free from repetitive tasks. And we're also going to transform efficiency, like we said. And then we're going to enhance creativity and focus and have smart resource allocation. That is one that we actually don't talk about often, or often enough, is that when you have a tool that can really speed up this process, guess what? You have more time back to allocate towards things that need your expertise or that you actually enjoy more. So we're going to talk with our panelists about that today, is like, what could you do with an extra 12 hours, with an extra 24 hours of your time? What could you do with an extra 100 hours of your time? Imagine that. Time is the one thing we cannot buy. But if you could get something that could give you time, more time in your day, and a tool, then that is something that's quite valuable. So here we talk about, number one, break free from those repetitive tasks. Feeling like, we laugh because we say you feel like a medical writing walker, like The Walking Dead, to play on the zombie theme. But it's true. I mean, I have friends like my colleagues here and panelists who are joining us today, who they tell me, I mean, when you're getting that database locked and then you have to start all of the documentation drafts, it takes a lot of time. And you pretty much have to go in a dark cave or at your computer and block out the world to try to get all this done. It's hard as a human being when you have family or other things happening, even other things at work. How do you get all this done? So then that takes us to transforming efficiency. We can help to take a big chunk of your workload, get it back into your schedule so that that part of your calendar is clear. You have more time to your day. You actually can prepare to have everything set up before the database is locked. In fact, some of our clients at Narrativa, quite a few now, at least half of them, are bringing our software, our platform in before the database is locked to get everything set up, the templates, the data mapping configuration for the documents, so that as soon as that database is locked, again, they get to press the button and start reviewing the first drafts, not writing them, just reviewing. And that really is a game changer. So here we go on to say it also helps with, enhanced creativity and focus. It's not going to just help you. It's going to help your team. You're going to be able to focus more on the data analysis. That's number one, and strategic planning. But again, data analysis goes back to like the AI automation solutions similar to Narrativa. They can, ours, I know for sure, we see many data discrepancies that are highlighted even before that database is locked or after the database is locked. And if you bring us in sooner, then it's like, wow, those highlights of data discrepancies can be fixed before that database is locked. And so it really helps with more of a data analysis component, and also strategic planning gives you those hours back so that you can actually work more on your strategic planning as a team. And lastly here, smart resource allocation. How can you use your hours, but also your team's hours in smarter ways? This is a very, very big thing. And so here's a few factors. I get asked this every day almost, how can I make sure that the AI solution I'm choosing for my company is valid? And how can I make sure that it's going to safeguard my team, but also our data? And how can I make sure that it's going to work well? So these are several things that we talk about. Make sure that you have expertise and experience. Make sure they have a tech stack that is solid, customization and flexibility, data security, adherence to industry standards, and comprehensive offering. So here, like in expertise and experience, I know from speaking from Narrativa, we've been around since 2015, quite a while, almost 10 years now. We've done quite a few studies, and we've shown that we've learned how to safeguard not only the proprietary data that is kept within the client's secure cloud environment or on their server. We also, work with making sure we have security and compliance all in place. This is really big. Make sure you are talking to your vendors about security and compliance, making sure that they have that paperwork done, they have certifications. I know that there's a new ISO 42001 certification for AI that came out last year from ISO. If you want to look that up, that is actually really important now, that I would say every AI vendor, especially in pharma, needs to have. This is a crucial time for us. Also tech stack. So, what are the key AI frameworks that they are working on? So, where do you want this AI solution integrated into your secure environment? That's actually a very big deal. We offer to all of our clients a very clear outline with graphics and images of how this is integrated into their IT systems. It will help your IT folks to feel a little bit more relief. So do this homework ahead of time. Talk with them. Ask the vendor, the AI vendor, what is your AI framework and tech stack? Same with customization. So we've seen, I've seen from my perspective as an executive in AI, as an AI vendor executive, that some other AI vendors within the space for clinical, they have a very cookie cutter solution, and it doesn't have much flexibility. I would say, as your friend, steer clear of those, just because when you're working on clinical trials, try to have something that is a little bit more customizable or flexible, because if you're doing oncology, phase 2 or phase 3 study, and then you have a, dermatology, phase 2 study, everything's going to have differences. We all know this. That's kind of like what we understand. So make sure that the solution you're working with has a lot of flexibility. And we make sure that our clients at Narrativa always know that we can customize it to be a seamless workflow process for the medical writing team. Again, here we go down to data security and compliance. This is really crucial as you vet out these vendors and you're seeking more information. Again, don't be afraid to ask them about security and compliance and privacy. I always tell every person I meet with, as you're, seeking out and researching vendors, please ask this question. Are you, training any of your AI models with client data, or proprietary data? That is a big, big no. You should make sure that the AI vendors are never using proprietary data or any client data to train their models or to improve their solutions. At Narrativa, we have made sure that we use public data, public anonymized data, like from CDISC or MedWatch, but we make sure we never use client data to improve our solution or to modify any of our models. That's actually very important. So the last ones here are industry standards. I'm excited to start asking questions here in about a minute or so with our panel. But with industry standards, this ruler as a symbol, it really has been hard, I think, the last 20, 30 years, as some of my colleagues here will talk about. The last 20 years, there's been a huge push to really try to increase industry standards. And I think we're feeling it from all sides, from regulators, from colleagues, from different companies within the industry. But how can we help not just our standards, right, if you're at a CRO or at a sponsor or a biotech, but how can you really help the whole industry? And I would say by ensuring consistency and structured data across your clinical trials, you're not just helping yourself, you're helping the whole industry. So working to, have CDISC standards, for those ADAM or SETM data sets. How can you then, maybe you have a different template for your patient narratives documents, but that's okay. But really having that data structure is super crucial. And if you want to use an AI vendor solution like Narrativa's, it only helps it to be faster and to be more seamless for that AI automation tool to work. So we really encourage people, keep going, try to have those industry standards as, really the pillars of your company and of your team. I'll tell you, it also will help you with regulators because that's what they want. The regulators also want standardization. Lastly here, I would say as you're vetting out vendors, AI vendors, ask for a comprehensive offering. Do they offer a variety of solutions that work together or can work individually? I know, speaking from my perspective at Narrativa, that's one of our goals, is we are constantly adding more and more solutions that are complementary so that you have a seamless workflow that is AI automated for your team. So that's what I really encourage you to really think about. And again, you'll have a copy of this today after the webinar if you want to see these notes. So we're excited. Narrativa is excited to be your partner. We partner with many of these companies right now, all of these companies and more. And our goal really is to empower you. It's great to make money or to build a company, but at the end of the day, it's really about medical writers and about biostatisticians, about ClinOps teams, making sure that they feel supported. Because if they feel supported, then again, the industry standards will increase, the quality of work will continue to increase, and ultimately, at the end of the day, many more patients will be helped and will be saved through this great work that we're doing. So I'm really happy that you came here today for the webinar. Now I'm going to skip over to our Q&A session with our panelists. So thank you, everyone. Sorry, that was a little bit of a rush, but I hope you got a lot of information out of it. I'm going to have Dave and Ihab and Mona join me here now for the panel. And I have a few questions that I'm going to start with. And then again, if you guys have questions, put them down in the bottom right chat for the panelists, and then I can ask those here in a few minutes. So, okay, Dave, I think I'm going to start with you first.
Sure enough.
What is the most laborious or painstaking part of medical writing, and how do you think it can be improved with technology from your perspective?
Well, I think we have to think about where the information comes from in order for the medical writer to use to produce their artifact or produce their document, right? So if you have clean data or clean information, then it makes your life that much easier. But if it's not in a standard format or not as harmonious as you would like it, then it's going to cause a lot of problems. You said, Jennifer, earlier about industry standards. It's so much of a paramount issue that you need to have the data in a high quality, high fidelity, high standard place to then have everything else downstream from it to be correct. So what I would say is that make sure that the information that you're getting is high quality, and that will certainly make sure any tools that you use will become much more efficient, much more have higher fidelity as the data moves along its journey. Now, from a medical writer standpoint, you then say, can you trust the information that you're getting? Can you trust the objective nature of the information rather than being subjective? And AI, in a general sense, has to have objective information to be high fidelity and have the algorithm generate the expected outcomes for it. So we in clinical research, by embracing the standards, the CEDAS standards, the regulatory information standards, that gives us a leg up on the general population of using AI to generate a narrative or generate a document, because you have a higher trust level if you're applying those standards to the source.
That's really good. That's really good. Thank you, Dave. And I think Mona, I'll come down to you on this, same topic is, as a working with medical writers and overseeing a lot of these projects, do you find what's the average, number of hours or days that it takes for a team to work on a CSR? Let's start with a CSR first, because I think that's a hot topic right now with everyone here.
Yeah, I never tracked like how many hours, but there are endless hours and days to do it. And as it said, it takes a village to do it. So I'm not the only one. So we have a group of colleagues working on it. So it takes us so much time to do it. So being, as Dave said, standardized, and as you pointed in your presentation, like having like AI involved in this is great. As you said, it takes like 24 hours to 48 hours just to do it. So this is like huge, and it helps a lot. And from my experience also working with Narrativa, as Dave said, the cleanness of the data, how clean the data is, how reliable it is. So also when you use the like AI to generate TFLs or TLFs, whatever you call it, is very, very helpful early on in the study while the study is ongoing, not at the very end when the database is locked. This is huge, because the standard way to do it is to wait until the database is locked and the study is done. And you are surprised how like the data has discrepancy, as Dave mentioned, and like you mentioned as well. So having the AI involved in this and cleaning the data using the AI early on is huge. And it was our experience as well with Narrativa. So we saw the difference.
Yeah, that was really great. And, that's an interesting, just to highlight that again, is I think there's going to be a real shift in the industry, in the mindset of, starting or at least prepping the clinical documentation prep before that database lock, because you really have to change mindsets here. It's not just about changing a schedule. It's about changing a mindset. And so it really does make a difference. And again, that's where we are seeing with clients, like we did with your team at LLS BAML, the Leukemia Lymphoma Society BAML group, that there was a huge time savings and increase in data accuracy by coming in sooner, right? Before that database is locked, so that we could actually be really kind of a cleaning tool, right? Or, an analysis tool to really highlight any issues that had to be resolved. Yeah. Yeah, it was great. Ihab,
Jennifer, can I chime in on that question particularly? Well, I have been following polls, and also from my personal experience, narratives usually take around 2 to 5 hours, depending on the complexity. If you're handling college, it's going to be more complex. Some therapeutic areas are less complex. Sometimes narratives would take around 30 minutes to 45 minutes to generate, so depending on the therapeutic area. Polls and my personal experience show it takes on average, say, of 2 to 5 hours. What I have seen with Narrativa is that this number goes down to 1,000 narratives in under 2 minutes. And that's something monumental. And witnessing that, when I first saw that, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe my own eyes, because usually, and that was an oncology narrative, something that would technically take around 3 hours to produce, given the intensity of the documents and the numbers of things that are involved, things you have to keep track of. That was pretty amazing. And the CSRs also extending to my experiences, like Mona mentioned, you don't even have to count that. It just takes ungodly amount of hours. That's really crazy. The automation technology can really propel that. And I have seen it with Narrativa, is that you can have an almost ready document with just the press of a click. That's really impressive. Like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, you wouldn't believe something like this. But today we're having this technology. It's really making an impact.
Yeah. And I think, going back to not only the time savings, but also the standardization. Dave, I know you had said, a little bit about standardization, but could you expand on that a little bit from the regulator standpoint? Because I know you've worked with CDISC and you've worked quite a bit with the FDA on trying to implement standardization. Do you think that the regulators are seeing this new wave of assistant tools, like automation tools that will help with standardization? And what are they talking about? Are they saying good things or bad things from their perspective?
Certainly, Jennifer. The requirement for delivery of electronic information to the FDA is now 10 years old. And that requirement led to a great increase on the analysis tools, the data analysis tools that the FDA use. And they have generated their own standard templates and own standard way of generating additional tables, listings, and figures. Well, what you find by working with the FDA medical reviewers and statistical reviewers, and I've done over 70 NDAs and worked with over 300 medical reviewers over my career, is what they are frustrated with is the diversity of approach of the documents, meaning that even within one firm or within one NDA, that the documentation has a flavor for whoever wrote it. And that becomes divergent for their efficiency of how they're going to do their medical review. And a lot of times it'll be a back and forth with the actual pharma company to get that resolved. But the more that you can apply automation to the documentation that is produced out of the original source document, and this goes back not just to the data collection, but also to the protocol. Most recently, the ICH and FDA and CDISC working on a digitalized protocol that will provide a template for that information, that metadata about the protocol, to drive into the data collection, to drive into the review, the analysis, the tables, listing, and figures, the documents, the CSRs, the narratives. And the more that can be all tied together and have traceability, the more that the FDA reviewers are going to be much more in tune with scientifically reviewing the data and reviewing the evidence, rather than trying to resolve differences on writing styles. And so this, by using a tool like Narrativas or any type of automation, you're harmonizing that approach so that there is one approach and it's generated in a consistent, objective manner with high fidelity and high quality data.
That's really good. And, you know, just to piggyback on that, I'm here in the chat and I see a few questions coming in. One of them was, and maybe you want to answer this first, and then Ihab and Mona can talk about it. But do you think the FDA will require AI for accuracy and standardization? And can you talk about accuracy in addition to the mass production of narratives? So, you know, do you think that they'll ever require that?
Well, it'll be a long time for a requirement for any AI tools to be used. It's not to say that they won't accept it. It's just that for them to have a particular approach for it to be, for the documentation to be produced, in my experience, it takes years, 5, 10 years in order for that to happen. That being said, though, they're more apt now to look at digital representations of the information, like a protocol or like a table listing in a figure, that are automatically generated rather than being programmatically generated by a programmer. If you take the next leap, you could say, well, if you have high quality, high fidelity information with high accuracy and is objective in nature, then any documentation that can be produced out of that could be submittable or acceptable for submission to the FDA. And I think that they're in tune to that, but it's still going to take a number of years for that to happen.
Yeah. And Ihab or Mona, do you want to chime in on that? Anything else?
No, I think I agree with Dave. Like, yeah, it will take time. Any change will take time. But I think when they see the quality of the data changes and it's to the better, I think it will be like leaning to going this way. And I also am very supportive of how the data should be, the quality of data and how clean the data should be. And I think also this is part of the AI that I can talk about. Like you have mentioned the narratives. Yes, the narratives, one of the things also experienced with Narrativa is the narratives can combine the safety database of the CRO, including the SIOMs or the MedWatches, and also the EGC, combining both data together. So also accuracy and reliable data. As I said, I'm very big fan of reliable data. Is this the correct data? Is this a clean data or not?
Yeah, let me just comment on that. One of the big markers that an FDA reviewer looks for is traceability. Traceability of the data from what should be collected in the protocol to what has been collected, and then what is represented on the tables, listings, and figures, the patient narratives, the CSRs, or any type of report that comes as part of the submission. So traceability is a big thing. And once you can link the data along its journey in an automated fashion, it goes a long way for acceptance and trust factor from a medical reviewer that the data is accurate.
Yeah, that is really good. And just to continue with that topic right there, is that, do you think that people or companies who are not using AI will be less competitive going forward? Maybe Dave, you want to start with that, and then Ihab or Mona chime in?
It's kind of a gray question, because if you have a good processes in place, a team in place that are consistent in the way they do it, maybe not as much. But what it's going to come down to is what I just said: traceability and the processes that are in place to produce a high quality, highly objective, highly not subjective type interpretation of the data. So the use of AI or any type of automation tools will enhance that, as long as that tool is accurate and is validated and meets all the requirements for a tool to be used in clinical research.
That's really good. And then Ihab, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to chime also on that point, but from a medical writer's perspective. So building on what Dave has mentioning on the accuracy of the data, given that point, I believe that a medical writer empowered with AI is going to outdo a medical writer that doesn't use AI. Just for a mere reason is that productivity at least is 100 times more than the productivity of a medical writer who doesn't use AI. Given that it's standard and accurate and all the points that Dave mentioned, then it comes the medical writer. It comes to the point of medical writer, because as I mentioned, some of the narratives are just getting information from multiple sources. It's really labor intensive, but it doesn't add much value in terms of, let's say, the educational background, the years that the medical writer has spent in understanding and learning and all of that. And then with AI, something like that can be automated. So instead of, for example, handling, let's say, 100 narratives per month, I can handle 1,000 or 10,000 and so on. So in terms of productivity as a medical writer empowered with AI is much, much, much more than a medical writer who doesn't use AI. So from a medical writer's perspective solely, given that it's the AI tool give you standardization and accuracy and everything, I believe companies that adopt AI as a medical writer will outperform companies that do not use AI, definitely.
Yeah, that's good. And that's very good. And Ihab, if you wouldn't mind, I have one more question here who I thought you might be the best person to start with for the answers. You know, a company who doesn't currently have AI or an AI directive, how do they get started? And I could share a lot, but Ihab, I'd love for you to share your perspective first, because this is kind of what you do at Narrativa. You really help train the medical writing teams on the AI platform. And so share a little bit, how do you get started?
Of course. Well, the first phase any medical writer should be doing is exploring, because there are so many companies that use AI right now because it's the hot topic everyone is talking about. So there are lots of companies offering solutions, but however, not all solutions work, because you need to find something that, as also doubling down on the points Dave and Mona have been mentioning, that you need tools that create data that are accurate, so that the tool also, or the software or the SaaS platform, when it works on that, it produces an outcome that you can rely on. The problem that medical writers face is trust issues. When I started going into this, I had trust issues. What if the output produced by the AI is not something accurate? Mm-hmm. And also it boils down to the point of the data. So if the data is accurate and it has been handled correctly by AI, I will build trust with time. So that's like I believe that's a crucial component in choosing, at least, and surveying the market and choosing the right solution for that will serve the medical writing teams, definitely.
Yeah, and I would add to that just really quick, Ihab, is that one of the things we've seen at Narrativa is that we can provide that trust when we are generating, high accuracy in documents, because our technology is not built just on an LLM, a large language model. And that's crucial for people to think about. When you're vetting out these vendors and doing research, AI vendor research, make sure you ask them, what is your technology built on? Is it built just on ChatGPT, or on GPT, or is it built on just a generative AI LLM? Because the large language models have high probability to hallucinate. And I think that has scared many people, rightfully so. But when you have a technology similar to like what Narrativa has done, that's built on a knowledge graph, really with a snowflake approach, that is using tiny, small statistical models. So really it comes down to math, right? Which I love, because math, there's a right answer and a wrong answer. There is no gray. And that's what we really go for, is that we want the accuracy to be based on statistical models primarily that generate data to text. If there is a summarization that has to happen between, let's say, a CM's report to summarize the procedure findings and put it into a patient narrative, then we will use a large language model, but very conservatively. And even then, in the output of, let's say, that patient narrative, where it has that little summary from the procedure findings of the CM report, that is highlighted by our solution in purple with a little QC bar note for the medical writer to say, please double check. Anything that is generated using LLMs needs to be highlighted for medical writers to review. Because if not, then you can lose their trust if there are high hallucinations. So that is one area that we've seen a big change happening where we can highlight any of those, highly hallucination type of areas that could hallucinate anything with an LLM, but also any data discrepancies are highlighted in the output of the document. Any, thoughts on that, Dave or Mona? I know if you've seen, any other companies that are having issues with hallucinations. I know quite a few sponsors I've talked to who tried to build solutions in-house using LLMs and just prompts, and that was actually quite problematic. Have you guys seen, Dave, have you seen anything like that?
What it goes back to is how is the algorithms used? What do they learn on, right? And what's the truth set that is being used? And so a lot of times where they're employing an AI or an LLM or whatever, they're using vast amounts of publicly available data to try to discern what's the probability of likelihood of what the expected sentence should be. Whereas if you're using it in the way that Narrativa is, where you have a tight set of standardized information with a known semantic knowledge of what the information is and have a mapping to it, the probability becomes very, very high that it's accurate. And then the model can then learn on that to then generate the outputted sentences or the outputted narratives. There's a big difference then from what you hear in the press or read about use cases or examples of hallucinations that are going on. And a lot of the problems come in where these models are used on medical records that are doctor narratives, that are doctor's notes, which have no real standardization in place. And so the model can then hallucinate as to what was going to be the summary should be. For clinical research, you're dealing with a highly structured, highly semantic terminology that can be applied, and thus the accuracy and the fidelity of the data goes way up. So that goes into then the trust equation as to gaining the trust of the people that are going to use this, the medical writers, the physicians, the reviewers of that type of information.
Yeah, that is great. Thank you so much, Dave. And thank you, Ihab and Mona. This has been great. I know we're 2 minutes over our time and we didn't get to everyone's questions, but if you have more questions, when you get the email today from me with this overview deck from the presentation, feel free to email me back your questions. I'd love to answer them and our team can answer them. But it's just been really fantastic to have you all here. Thank you, Mona. Thank you, Ihab. Thank you, Dave. And we hope everyone has a safe Halloween. If you are trick-or-treating, be careful. And thank you for attending, everyone, today. And we hope that this was encouraging, insightful, and please reach out to me if you have more questions. All right. Have a great rest of the day. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.